Hey everybody, Tom Marks here with PC Gamer, and I'm here to give you an early look at Civilization Beyond Earth's first expansion pack, Rising Tide. Now, obviously, the biggest difference and the main thing they added to the game with this expansion is water stuff, for lack of a better term, to be perfectly honest. There's a lot more water resources, there's more aliens that will attack you in the water, and you have to defend yourself from. There's expanded water units you can build, both military and otherwise. And the largest difference is, of course, you can build cities on water. And I actually spoke to the lead producer of Beyond Earth, and he said that one of the main things they wanted to do was make sure that water cities were not just cities on blue tiles, which I think is a really important distinction. And from the time I got to play the first 150 turns of the game. It didn't exactly feel like that. I mean, obviously they can't make them completely different because then you would just be changing how you play Civ, and that nobody really wants, Civ to not be Civ. But they're different in important ways. Like, the simplest is water units are built quicker on water cities and land units are built slower, and vice versa. That's a very easy to understand difference. But then the biggest difference, and honestly my favorite change that came with the expansion, is how your borders grow in water cities. You can still buy tiles like you normally would with energy, just like in Beyond Earth or with gold in the other Civ games. But the distinction here is that culture no longer expands water tile or water city borders. Instead, how you do it is you have to put production into moving your city. So you devote the production of that city into spending however many turns that'll take. Sometimes it's as low as 1 turn to move it a tile away. And then you can keep moving it. And every new tile that you go over, you get all of the adjacent territory becomes part of your civilization's territory, which means you can do these really weird, cheesy strategies if you wanted, where you could build a city and just let it die, basically, but spend its entire production all the time moving it along a coastline and just take over the entire coastline for your territory. And that's totally possible. Or you could draw a huge circle in the middle of the ocean and just kind of keep everyone out. You could draw a line all the way up the center of the map and have that be your, Berlin Wall of territory that nobody can cross if you don't want them to. Or you can do exactly what you would do with a normal city, just kind of shimmy it around in a tiny little circle, and then it has all this area that it can work. Because the 3 tile limit is still there. You can only work tiles of a city that are up to 3 tiles away. How the city interacts with tiles is the same, but how it grows is vastly different, and it's a really, really cool mechanic that it kind of just feels like you're painting your territory of your civilization around the map, which is an interesting feeling, and it definitely changes how you think about the water cities. Outside of water stuff, there isn't a huge amount actually gameplay-wise, and what that means is, there's a lot of new resources in the water and stuff like that. There's not new resources, but what they've done, one of my favorite parts of what they've done is they just totally updated the UI. They made it much better. One of the mods that you needed to download off of the Steam Workshop, basically, to play Civilization Beyond Earth was this one that helps clarify the tech web. It adds colors, it changes up symbols, it makes it much easier to understand. And they've done their own version of that built into Rising Tide. So the tech web in general is, once you learn the visual language of it, is much, much easier to understand and much easier to parse through and kind of quickly decide what you want. There's also this really nice kind of affinity, I hesitate to call it Affinity Wheel, basically, where it shows you, your progress in each affinity, and you can have hybrid affinities now where going into 2 affinities will give you certain bonuses that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten, and that's a cool little gameplay change. So you're getting a lot of the things that you would expect with a Civilization expansion that aren't just the new things, right? So Gods and Kings added, for Civilization 5, added a bunch of religious stuff. But then beyond that, it just balanced the game in a lot of ways, and it revamped culture, and it did this and that. So you get a lot of those updates aside from the water stuff. It is still what you would expect from a Civ expansion. Even if you only do all land maps, you're still going to see that update. And one of those updates also is the addition of this new resource called Diplomacy, where as you work with people and as you do trade agreements and stuff like that with them, you can start generating diplomacy. And diplomacy you can actually spend on either other trade agreements with them where you can give them some of your diplomacy resource to get some of the benefits from them, or you can spend it on these new things called personality traits for your leader, where your leader will always start with one personality trait, and then there are 3 others that you can buy with diplomacy that are just a little permanent bonus for your civ. And then you can upgrade those personality traits. And if you play your cards right with the AI, you can have a lot of diplomacy, and you can pretty quickly get into all of these high-level personality traits. And then you can change them if you want later, where you're saying, oh, I'm no longer using this certain one for military, I'm going more culture, so I'll change it into a culture trait. But my main concern with Rising Tide is that Beyond Earth still isn't as much of a blank slate as Civ 5 was, and that's not really a problem they can fix with an expansion. I think that there is a certain appeal to having a real-world country and building from the Stone Ages and expanding your empire and creating these cool narratives, and you don't get as much of that feeling when you're in space with these based on real-life countries, but still fake, and you're not on Earth, and you don't see all these landmarks that you're used to, and the wonders are all different. And, that'll really appeal to some people, and Rising Tide doesn't change that for the better or worse. It's just that I'm not sure if it fixes the problem that some people have with Civ, which is that they can't create their own world-building storyline when you're on an alien planet and everything is super high-tech already. A lot of people will find that appealing, and to the people who do, Rising Tide is a really, really cool and in-depth expansion that, it doesn't just feel like, oh, here's some water things. It feels like a real, true Civ expansion. Be sure to check out all of our coverage of Civilization Beyond Earth Rising Tide as we learn more about it on PCGamer.com. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.